With Hyrule being as vast and sprawling as it is in Tears of the Kingdom, the stables scattered throughout the land make for a welcome pit stop for Link to get some rest or snag a horse. But guess what? Link's not the only traveler in Hyrule. No, Hylians across the land deserve to know the quality of the resting places they'll be visiting. So today, we're going to be taking a look at an exclusive report that will shed some light on which stables are worth visiting on your trip to Hyrule. I present your guide for today, expert critic Gloria Swanbottom.
Gloria Swanbottom here, Hyrule's premier critic. I've stayed in renowned places all over Hyrule and have experienced it all. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So today I'm seeing if any of the stables in Hyrule are presentable enough to satisfy a critic with true taste. And they'd better put their best foot forward, because a lengthy Yelp review will be left after my visit. Now, as a chain establishment, stables have various features that are consistent regardless of location. The exterior and interior architecture and basic decor are all uniform. The stable owners all brought my horse at a congruently expected rate. And all of the locations have a few standard beds and one deluxe bed that all provide an adequate quality of sleep. In the fancy bed, a horse god speaks to you, yada yada, but we'll get into it later. But there's far more to the suitability of an inn than merely these traits. The true test lies in the details. Onward. This place was freezing. So much so I was forced to change into much less fashionable attire, which already put me in a bad mood. However, I must hand it to the stable. They were prepared to accommodate, as they offered plenty of flint and wood, as well as spicy peppers that could be used to make recipes to keep you warm. And they were smart enough to have a fire built by the seating, so I stopped for a bit to listen to the band play. They were not to my liking. The first employee I came across admitted that the place didn't get much traffic, but even though he stood way too close, he was polite enough and gave me a warming potion, so I thanked them and offered them a breath mint. That breath mint was poison. Just kidding, he's just old. The stable owner was equally as apologetic about the weather, which got him points, but then trauma dumped on me, which immediately took those points away. The inside was nothing to sneeze at. They had some drawings of Don footprints that the owner attributed to those of a beast, which I didn't bother correcting him on. The beetle man was freezing in the back, and they had a recipe for what looked like dog food hanging up. I suppose people who live in this sort of weather have pre-established low standards. Good luck getting much sleep here with that incessant racket outside. There's no way they have a permit to be playing at 5:45 a.m. Finally, they had a well out back that was frozen over, but if you think I had time in my precious schedule to wait for that to thaw, you are mistaken. 2 stars. Since I was in the area, I stopped by Rito Stable, but was thoroughly disappointed to find that the trip had been in vain, seeing as it had closed and turned into a newspaper production facility. But the old owner was also still hanging around all depressed, which was very sad. Marking as closed. Finally peace and quiet from that irksome band. Oh great, a singer instead. Their staff was interesting. One was a bit too preoccupied daydreaming, and the other made sheep puns. Great. This place is known for its massive flock of sheep, and it sure smells like it. It also— oh god, it's a child! And this one doesn't have a leash, so visitors be warned that children run amok at this stable. And they're delusional. The owner of this stable shocked me by actually advertising a different stable, which seems like a bad business practice to me. Anyway, he went on and on about a horse god that was there, and the jealousy that emitted from him was quite unpalatable. Looking around, they had another dog food recipe, although this one used prime meat, so at least we're headed in the right direction, and a sketch of a Don that a notably not working employee was staring at. She was obsessed with the horse god in Akkala Stable as well. So since this stable seemed set on me not staying at their own place of business, I'll give them 3 stars and move on to their preferred choice. Number 1, local wildlife is not friendly. And on my way, I also noticed that the property is adjacent to the tech lab that's been taken over by the Yiga clan, so definitely a rough neighborhood. When I got to the stable itself, I spoke with the stable hand. Immediately with the horse god talk. Get a hobby, people. And as much as the South Akkala stable talks about this stable talks about them right back. She asked what kind of stable had sheep, and I didn't know how to break it to her. We'll chalk this up to delusional staff. I think what troubled me the most about this stable is that it had a guest that was clearly in distress. Well, of course I didn't have time to help them. No one else seemed particularly interested in helping them either. Honestly, since they're on the company's property, that could be grounds to sue. But not my zoo, not my monkeys. Weapon usage was also permitted on the premises, though I did appreciate that the customers who wished to practice their weaponry skills did it a safe distance away from the building. They also had a snack bar outside, and if you ignored the distress cries from the nearby Korok, it made for a nice treat. I was unimpressed by the interior. A mop was left by the entrance, which I felt was gauche, and their offered recipe was a very common meat and rice bowl. Once the owner of the stable started yapping about the horse god, I was sick of it and decided to just go find it myself. And yikes, my man, are you sure you want this thing staying at your inn? I think you need a bigger bed. I got back and oh god, time to go. 2 stars. Outskirt Stable is located at a very convenient spot along a popular trail, as proven by the visiting Gerudo women, who sported incredibly fashionable bags, by the way. At first I was concerned that this might be the site of harlotry, but upon eavesdropping it turned out they were more so looking to acquire partners than clientele. This stable had a greeter that was a bit too enthusiastic, but I appreciate the advertising efforts. The outside was unimpressive, with excess materials and garbage strewn about. Terrible parking situation, by the way. The employees are clearly misused and don't make an attempt to hide their disdain. This one was even comfortable insulting the venue directly to a guest's face. He talked for a very long time about various tourist spots around, and eventually I got bored and left. Oh look, more trash. The employee by the... Okay, yes, I'm coming, thank you. Anyway, the employees were not only unsatisfied, but lazy as well. Then I decided to... Oh my god, I'm literally on my way in. The owner was nice enough, but once again I had to sit through a spiel about tourist destinations. Why is everyone here obsessed with being a tour guide? The lack of privacy at the inns never really hit me until I saw this gentleman snoozing out in the open. And even he was trying to tell me where to go. The thought of sleeping in such crowded quarters really turned me off. I prefer solitude to get my beauty rest. Unable to resist their tour guide impulses, they had also put up a map exclusive to their location that showed different cherry blossom locations, which I thought was an extravagant touch. The inn featured an egg tart recipe, which was fitting as I do expect a continental breakfast in the morning at any place I reside. I couldn't stop hearing about a great fairy located right next to the stable, so I decided to see what all the fuss was about. She was in fact beautiful, but nothing can hold a candle to Gloria Swanbottom. While I appreciated the cherry blossom map and the convenient location, this place was mostly unimpressive, and with the inn being claimed, I was ready to head out. At least there's one person who likes their meat. Oh my heavens! That has to be a safety violation! 3 stars. The weather around this stable is simply dreadful. And look, I'm a reasonable woman. I was even kind enough to leave and try again another day, and it was still raining, which sadly didn't deter the band. So while I know the stable owner can't control the weather, they were the ones who decided to build the stable in such a rainy area, so they will be faulted. Environment is crucial in evaluating a place. Also, I was standing there wet for forever, and no one even offered me a towel. Anyway, I tried not to stay out in the rain for too long, but the place has a horse girl in the back, an emo boy, and a stable hand who can't keep straight which stable she works for. She also gave me a spicy elixir, which was nice when the old man gave one to me because it was cold. But here it doesn't make sense since it's wet, not cold. Not to mention it's used. This was just insulting. Inside it was crowded with a backtrack of incessant fighting. And the posted recipe was for a tomato mushroom stew, which is fine, I guess. A vegan option, at least. All in all, there are far better places in Hyrule to stay. 1 star. Dueling Peak Stable is kind of surrounded by nothing, but not in a sweeping scenery way, just in kind of a dull way. There are also way too many seats for the band, and there's a reason that all of them are empty. They have a charming number of animals, with absolutely no one looking after them. Oh, and I saved the worst for last. Children. Rude children. Children who have scribbled all over the stable, absolutely plummeting the property value. Even the apple pie recipe on the wall couldn't save this place, though it does look scrumptious. The owner is, who Right. Well, one of them actually knows what a Don is, so I'll give them that. But the other was pushing the top of Dual Peak so hard that I figured that this must be their main attraction. So in an effort to find something noteworthy about this place, I decided to give it a go. But by the time I got all the way up that monstrous climb, not only was it nighttime, but someone else was already at the top. And there were monsters literally right there, which is a huge guest safety hazard. Cool recommendation. 2 stars. I decided to airdrop into this one. Delivery! Aside from the monstrous band, the first thing I'm greeted with is this kid who's obsessed with bugs. I smell an infestation on the horizon. There's a gentleman tending to a few goats over here, and a woman casually exploiting child labor laws over here, which makes it all the more concerning that the bug-obsessed small one is apparently involved in the upkeep of this place. I am in awe of how little this woman cares about impressing the guest. She describes how your 2 ambient noise choices are the raucous band or the bleating of goats. And at this point, I'm thinking she's writing my review for me. The child laborers she speaks of obviously lack professional training, and the fact that one revealed that they don't get too many new customers is illuminating. I love getting to work with my family, she said through gritted teeth. Someone needs to be called about this place. This place didn't even bother putting an actual food recipe up, just a potion. Not exactly cozy. And we had another clueless gentleman unfamiliar with Dons. But I'm not paid to be a teacher, so he'll have to go on wondering. Not a bad view on either side, so all in all, if you like child labor, bugs, goat bleating, and a lack of food, this place is for you. 2 stars. I actually liked the spacious layout of Wetland Stable. They do allow their chickens to roam freely, so non-bird inclined visitors be wary. The otherwise sweeping view was tainted by the unseemly sight of the gloom-infested castle, and while at first I was truly taken by the beautiful forest scenery around the back, a stable hand quickly squandered any admiration I had by dramatically emphasizing how dangerous the wood actually was. Like, didn't hold back at all on the scariness of the situation. Really went for it. So this staff member appeared dead set on scaring guests away, and the other was pessimistic and frankly brazen in their disregard for their job. Acting like this in front of a guest is simply unacceptable, and the other openly acknowledged it as well. Combine this with the fact that they kept their compost outside within guest view, and the fellow visitors being quite rude, and we were already off to a bad start from the exterior alone. The interior didn't impress me much either, as it held an unappetizing potion recipe and more Don tracks. Though I will say that the innkeeper impressed me with his adaptability when learning the truth behind the tracks. He really said no fake news. The employees should take a tip or 2. This place had a ton of potential, but I just can't overlook the aforementioned issues. 3 stars. Highland Stable has an incredible view. Beautiful, vast plains peppered with gorgeous stallions. Apparently not for riding, though. If the stable was being rated on the view alone, it would easily get 5 stars. Unfortunately, it's not. One thing I quickly noted was the dishevelment of the excess material area right out front. If it's going to be one of the first things that the guest sees, proper organization is vital. Another one of the first things you encounter is this negging gentleman who is under the impression that I don't have better things to do than gamble. A poor representative of the stable indeed. The stable hand, however, had a suitable attitude, though she wrongly assumed my gender. But her work ethic was admirable to the point where I could forgive it. She had some tourist spot suggestions, and though she was quite chatty, she was endearing in a way. But okay, seriously, it was way too much. This was the first stable I had come across that had bovine, and I must admit I was pretty awestruck at the beefy surprise. Talking to more of the employees, I picked up on the trend that everyone was nice enough, just so chatty. Even the innkeeper when I woke up had a lot to say, and this one should probably go to therapy. Finally, moving inside, I was pleasantly surprised at the honey crepe recipe pinned to the wall. Now that is the level of cuisine I can appreciate. All in all, the Highland Stable was quite impressive, with only a couple of blemishes marring its impeccable visage. 4 stars! Riverside Stable is a shockingly busy establishment, and as you may have guessed from the name, on the river, making it very wet. One of their workers lost all the cuckoos, and I'm not sure what they want me to do about it, though it seems incredibly unsanitary to have cuckoos spreading their germs everywhere, especially indoors. Look, even the beetle man wants nothing to do with it. That's how you know it's bad. There are shady characters that hang around the back, and what appears to be an unhoused populace mere steps away from the property, which seems ironic in some way. The house recipe is a crab stir-fry. But before you get too excited, one of this establishment's chefs has a history of putting monster guts in the food, giving everyone food poisoning. Also, I'm not sure why a place needs 3 chefs. Feels like overkill. I will say, this is how you organize extra materials. Very neat. Bravo. I'll give it 3 stars. On the way to Lakeside Stable, I stopped by the Don-Dons that everyone had been raving on and on about. Underwhelming. Then it took me forever to find the actual stable, seeing as it was hidden among the jungle's trees and thick fog. When your visitors have to play Where's Waldo to find your establishment, that's not a great sign. Looking around the grounds, I was impressed that they had a sort of makeshift patio that matched the jungle theme, and it was being fully utilized by an individual that I assume would normally be indoors reading the paper. This was a nice touch. There was also a ladder with a platform at the end, and seeing as I didn't see any no climbing signs, I climbed it, thinking surely they wouldn't build a ladder to nothing. Disappointing. The stable owner was surprisingly brave compared to all the rest, which wasn't an unwelcome change of pace. Inside, they had a recipe for a tomato seafood soup, which didn't sound particularly appealing to me, but hey, the locals were impressed. All in all, it wasn't a terrible stable, but I could see why tourists weren't flocking to the hidden stable in the musty jungle that got frequent thunderstorms. However, the first employee I came across didn't seem to think that this was the reason for the lack of patrons. He was annoyingly whining about his problems with some giant monsters out loud, and then had the audacity to get smart when I didn't take the bait. But he insisted that they didn't have visitors because of these monsters, and I hate that sort of victim mentality. So I went and killed the 3 giants. What, like it's hard? And guess what? When I went back, same number of guests, even after spending the night. Guess it wasn't the giants, huh? 3 stars. I had heard rumors that the Gerudo Canyon stable had closed, but seeing the dog at the entrance, I held out hope. Alas, judging by the broom at the... Yes? Judging by the broom at the entrance, that appeared to be true. Eerily, there was still this dude staring blankly at a wall. And ironically enough, a fine-looking mushroom risotto recipe. What a waste. Closed. Nestled among the cliffs, Foothill Stable has a pretty unforgettable view. Oh, clock that monster, that's a point off. There's also an employee in possession of several dogs, and although the dogs could use an attitude adjustment, excuse you, people seem to like dogs, so I consider it a pro. The stable owner, who I'm pretty sure has a fake beard, was kind enough, but clearly hadn't heard that the horse god was yesterday's news. In fact, I'm getting deja vu because they had Don tracks hanging up as well as another disappointing potion recipe. It's like no one appreciates the art of fine cuisine anymore. And I must inform potential visitors that there was recently a nudist issue at this stable, so I advise against families visiting, especially during the warmer months. 3 stars. Woodland Stable was not only located in a very convenient location, but had a clear view in pretty much every direction, making for a beautiful open atmosphere. I was also impressed at the knowledge and dedication of the old man they had posted up, who was ready and willing to give direction to travelers. In addition, they built a lovely wooden patio area, and each table came fully equipped with cups and pitchers. And even though there was a nearby off-leash child, they were properly keeping to themselves and staying still. But better than anything I had come across thus far was a guest who very clearly had impeccable taste and an eye for fashion. Clearly, if a guest with this level of sophistication deemed the stable worthy of staying at, it must have some merit. I could have stayed there and chatted all day, but unfortunately my very important job wasn't finished. Although at this point I was sick of hearing about the Don-Dons, I did note that the employee was dedicated enough to wait until her break to explore her interests, so I appreciated that work ethic. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that the back of the stable offered even more, in that it had a charming goat pen and a lovely lakeside view. Admittedly, I wasn't a huge fan of how their storage was right out in front within view of guests, but but a relatively small complaint comparatively. The band was still there, but nobody's perfect. And I have the feeling that the owner felt similarly to me, as they didn't bother putting seats in front of the band, fully knowing they weren't necessary. And I appreciate that type of underhanded shade. This stable owner also had by and large the best tourism suggestion I'd gotten thus far. A hot springs. I was simply titillated. What might have been the most shocking thing, however, was that when I went inside, there was no recipe to be seen. I was aghast. But then I thought about it, and it made all the sense in the world. When you go to a regular restaurant, the menu item and prices are right there. When you go to a really nice restaurant, you can view the menu items, but they leave off the prices. But when you go to an exquisite restaurant, there's no menu at all. You get what the chef serves. This stable clearly knew its clientele. We have no need to make our own food, so why give us recipes? It was genius. For all those reasons, Woodland Stable gets 5 stars and the Gloria Swanbottom stamp of approval. And that's all for Hyrule Stables. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm due for tea with the trendiest guest here. Toodles!
Thank you, Gloria. I'm sure I can be expecting lots of nice comments after that. Well, there you go. According to Gloria, if you're traveling around Hyrule, Woodland Stable is a must-stay. But Highland Stable is probably worth the trip too. And if you're a family with kids and you're traveling, I hope you don't end up in the same place as Gloria. If you want more profoundly ridiculous and ridiculously profound gaming content, remember to subscribe. And thanks to my patrons for helping me be able to make these videos. I'm gonna go make my reservation at Woodland before they fill up, but I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Goombanna is the wonder why she didn't come to play. Gaming vids that'll make you laugh and think and put them on replay. Intelligent, kind and funny, her community's #1. Stick around and kick your feet up. Goombanna has just begun.